We should start with a song. Tov lehodot Lashem. By the way, the words are in the message in the box, and I'll re-put them up so everyone can see them if you joined late. Tov lehodot Lashem ulezamer leshimcha elyon. Tov lehodot Lashem, Tov lehodot Lashem, Tov lehodot Lashem, ulezamer leshimcha elyon. Tov lehodot Lashem, hayay ulehagid baboker chastecha, ulehagid baboker chastecha, ve'emunatcha baleilot, ve'emunatcha baleilot. Tov lehodot Lashem, Tov lehodot Lashem, Tov lehodot Lashem, ulezamer leshimcha elyon. Tov lehodot Lashem, Tov lehodot Lashem, ulezamer leshimcha elyon. Hayay להגיד בבוקר, בוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות. או להגיד בבוקר, בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות. So we started with this song because today I changed it up. I had on schedule that we'd be doing a little bit of the high holidays tefillah, but I saw that we're going to be doing that later on, and I wanted to express to you all how much kvetching I've been doing the last half a year. I think I've never kvetched so much in my life. The last half a year, so many times I've seen the negative, the tough, we're in lockdown, this stinks, oh my God, like, could this get any worse? And I decided, based on that, I need a little bit uplifting. So I'm changing it up, and we're going to be doing a whole session on brachot, on blessings that we can do anywhere, at home, in the car, all the different types of blessings that we have, thank God, that we have in our tradition. We're going to be talking about some of them in more detail, and some of them just to know that these exist, that these blessings exist. So we'll start by singing a verse at the end of Birkat Hamazon that we all say, Nar hayiti gam zakanti, velo hayiti tzadik ne'ezav. וזרעו מבקש לכם, אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. And again, this will be posted right now in the chat. נער הייתי וגם זקנתי ולא ראיתי צדיק נעזב ולא ראיתי צדיק נעזב וזרעו מבקש לכם. נער הייתי גם זקנתי ולא ראיתי צדיק נעזב ולא ראיתי צדיק נעזב וזרעו מבקש לכם. השם עוז לעמו ייתן, השם עוז לעמו ייתן, השם יברך את עמו בשלום. Now the reason why I started with this is because this is a verse from Birkat Hamazon, from the blessing after the meal. At the end of the blessing after the meal, we end with this last verse, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. But what I want to talk to you about it is something more personal. My family has a tradition of singing this in like choral. Everyone has a part. There's a lot of clapping, and at the end we all sing together in harmony. And my grandfather is insisted that we sing this like it's as if the Messiah has arrived, and we're all, we see that everything's going to be good. Now, my grandfather's story, I'm not going to get too into it, but he escaped Nazi Germany and as a 14-year-old boy and moved to England and without his family. And when he was in England, he started putting tefillin on every day and praying for his family. And after the war, he found out that his family survived somehow, because his father, my great-grandfather, was in concentration camp. But my grandfather's prayers, according to my grandfather, were answered, and his family was saved. His brother, my uncle Shaul, my great-uncle Shaul, who lives in Israel, who's a great Zionist, but like completely secular, never touches prayer, not even with a fork or whatever they say. He won't look at prayer ever. Whenever we get to this part of the Birkat Hamazon, even though our tradition, his father did it, and his father's father, and his father's mother, and all these people did it in a certain way, he won't ever say this verse. Because the verse says, I have been young, and now I'm old, yet I have not seen a righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging for bread. And he says, if I were to say this, I'd be lying completely. I would be lying. And honestly, I can't blame him, because he saw the terrible things that of the Holocaust. And I just wanted to point out before we start that there's two ways of looking at the world. And I'm not judging my great-uncle whatsoever. I really am not. But there's a way of looking at it like this and a way of looking at it this. And tonight, although there's a place for both sides of looking at the world, we're going to look at it more on the side of my grandfather through blessings and prayer. And I want to tell the story that I've told you before about the noble, rich child or young man who was kind of a spoiled brat and decided, I'm going to go enlist in the cavalry. I've told you this story, the curse of blessings, but I have to tell it again before we start. The curse of blessings, right? This is the story. So this nobleman, this young man decides he's going to join the cavalry. And of course he gets in like that, no tests is needed. He's from a rich family, and he gets in, he barely has to train, and he's put on guard duty in front of the camp. And late one evening he's on guard duty, and he's kind of cursing, and if anyone here has ever done guard duty, it stinks. And he's cursing everything. He's saying, this stinks. How could I be in this situation? And out of the shadows, a shadowy figure comes and says, I'm going to challenge you to a duel. And this nobleman says, get out of here. I don't want to deal with you. I'm not dealing with this. Get out of here. And he says, on guard. He pulls out his sword, and they have a fight. And the shadowy figure loses the fight and is stabbed in the chest or somewhere and says, you might have defeated me today, but I curse you with blessings. And every day that you don't say a new blessing, any day you don't say a new blessing, you will die. You will die. And the nobleman's like, get out of here. This is the stupidest thing I ever done. And he watches the shadowy figure crawl back into the shadows. Later that evening, he's still cursing out every bit of sand he can see. And he starts to get really sick and ill. And he really feels like he's about to die. So literally, it's like the end of the day. He feels like he's having his last breath, and he looks up at the sky and he sees a star, and he's like, how nice is that star? Just the twinkle. I mean, it's beautiful. I bless the stars. And all of a sudden, his breath comes back to him, and he's alive again. The next day, the same thing happens. He's like, it must have been a coincidence. I must have eaten something off. And he gets to the end of the day. And at the end of the day, he's sick again, and he's kind of he has no breath left. and the sun is going down, and he sees the evening sunset, and he says, wow, what a beautiful sight. I can't imagine never seeing that again. I bless the sunset. And he miraculously becomes well again. And so on and so forth for years. Every day he finds a new blessing. And because he finds a new blessing, he becomes very popular. People start to know him as the person who gives wonderful blessings. And people come to him from all over to receive blessings from him. And he has wonderful blessings. I bless you for having beautiful eyelashes. I bless you for having wonderful curvy eyebrows. And he finds the most beautiful blessings. And he becomes very popular. He becomes the mayor of the town, and he has great grandchildren. He lives a full life, and at 100 years old, he decides, you know what? Like I've lived a good life, and today I'm not going to say a blessing. And as the night draws in, the darkness appears, and out of the shadows of the night comes the shadowy figure that he met many years ago. And the shadowy figure comes to him and says, I'm the angel of death. And the once spoiled brat, now kind of new person, says, I bless you, death, for giving me life. Because without you, I would never have had a real life. I would have just taken everything for granted. And his breath comes back to him, and he lives ad 120 until 120. So the story is a very powerful story, and I think it's very important in times today to think of this story, because so many times we are just like knocked off our perch, knocked off our feet from these new things that are coming out in the news. We don't have to get into it. And I really believe that if we take time to look for the blessings in life, we will change the world to a better place, and we'll change ourselves. We really will change ourselves. So with that being said, the first blessing that I want to talk to you about is a blessing that is said possibly 3 times a day. It's one of the more popular blessings. It's a blessing that we say almost at every occasion. It's said together as a quarrel. I don't know what the name is, but as a group or by yourself, and that is the Birkat Hamazon, benching, as they say in Yiddish, or grace after meals. The reason why I want to start with this blessing is because it has the most tochen, has the most stuff in it, and by looking at food and the way we interact with food, we can really, from that, we can use food as a metaphor for everything in life. Once you look at food a certain way, we can look at everything the same way, and you'll be fine. And I think Seth must agree with me on that, right? Yes, exactly. And for all those eating now, you can think now about your grace after meals, what you'll say after this. So, as we go through the grace after meal, I'm going to put on in the chat the translation of what we're talking about, and also the Hebrew. So where do we even begin to learn from the Torah to say the grace after meals? There's a pasuk, there's a sentence in Dvarim, Ve'achalta v'savata uverachta. So the actual verse goes like this. I'm going to put it on the chat. One sec, I apologize, just coming up. Yeah. Ve'achalta v'savata uverachta et Adonai Elohecha al haaretz asher noten lach. And here it is. Ve'achalta, and you ate. V'savata, and you were satisfied. Uverachta, and then you blessed. God, our Elohecha, your God, ala haaretz, on the land, the good land, asher natan lach, that God gave to you. So this is the pasuk that we learn according to Torah, that we should say a bracha, grace, after we eat. Now, before we go to grace after meals, what about before meals? Do we say a blessing before meal? And it's very interesting. We do say a blessing before meal. We can say Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam motzi lechem min haaretz, but it's not Doraita. It's not from the Torah. It's from the rabbis. It's Derabanan. So it's from the rabbis that we do that, because it's not in the Torah that it says that. And the Gemara brings it up. Why would we say a blessing, or why do we bless the food that we're about to eat? And it basically says because otherwise it would be like stealing property. Now, this is a wonderful thing that I learned when I was very young. When I was in high school, I used to go to the Philadelphia Kollel, like Black Hatter, Lakewood type people. And we used to study Masechet Brachot with a Rabbi Zefrin. And we would have pizza before we started. And I remember Rabbi Zefrin spending like weeks on this topic of stealing food from God. And I remember it wasn't even just Masechet Brachot. We had to go to, I think, Baba Metzia, which deals with lost property. And in the Masechet lost property, if you find a stack of coins laid out on the floor, you can't take it because obviously someone put it there on purpose. Well, here in Masechet Baba Metzia, we talk about eating food without saying a blessing. Can you imagine? It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. And so we go back to Masechet Brachot, and it says, taking food and eating it without saying a blessing is similar to stealing from God. We have to remember that this food comes from somewhere. And yes, of course it comes from the farmers. But before the farmers, before the land, there was rain, there was a system that was made so that we can even have a concept of saying a blessing. So that is why it's important to say a blessing before you eat, according to the rabbis. Now we go back to grace after meals. And we start with two psalms that were introduced only 400 or 500 years ago. And I want to remind Debbie that one of the songs that we sang a couple weeks ago in our tefillah service is Shir HaMa'alot B'Shuv Adonai, which is the psalm we say before Birkat HaMazon during holidays. Actually, we say it anytime we don't say Tachanun. Anytime we don't say Tachanun on a holiday, so it's like Rosh Chodesh, maybe Purim. On days of those type of days, we say Shir HaMa'alot B'Shuv Adonai. On the days where we do say Tachanun, we say Al Naharot Bavel, which is a song about sitting on the banks of Babylonia, and remembering Zion. It's just like an introduction to Birkat HaMazon. And like we learned in the Amidah, a lot of the Birkat HaMazon is about redemption and the rebuilding of Jerusalem, because it was kind of compiled during the time of basically when Jerusalem was very imbalanced, the Maccabean era and closer towards the destruction of the Second Temple. This era wasn't there's a verse, it wasn't taken for granted that we have Jerusalem, that we have Zion. And that's why so much of the Birkat HaMazon and the Amidah has to do with returning to the land of Israel and rebuilding Jerusalem. And you'll see that. We'll get there in Birkat HaMazon. So the first part I'm going to say is Shir HaMa'alot, right? Shir HaMa'alot, we sing this before we start the Birkat HaMazon on let's say Shabbat. And as we go through each thing, I'm going to give like a little bit of my own melody. And here it is. This melody that I'm using is a melody that my grandfather taught me, and we sing it every day. And I sing it in the prayer service we did a couple weeks ago. Shir HaMa'alot B'Shuv Adonai, Et Shivat Zion Hayinu Kechomim, Az Yimale Schok Pinu Ushonenu Rina, Az Yomru Vagoyim, Igdil Adonai Lasot Imele, Igdil Adonai Lasot Imanu, Hayinu Semechim, שובה אדוני את שבטנו כאפיקים בנגב, הזורים בדמעה ורינה יקסורו, הלוך ילך ובכו נושא משך הזרע, בו יבוא ורינה נושא אלומותיו. And with intention I don't sing Tehilat Adonai Yedaber Pi, because that was cut out by the Zionists in the last century. So in many shuls in America or places like Borough Park, you're going to hear Tehilat Adonai Yedaber Pi. That section of the psalm was cut out because of Zionism. Why? If you look at the words, it's all about Israel and the land. And Tehilat Adonai Yedaber Pi is not necessarily about the land. So later on in the last century, we cut out Tehilat Adonai Yedaber Pi because of Zionism, I would say. So now we get to the beginning of the Birkat Hamazon that we know, where we ask everyone to join us. We say Rabotai or Chaverai Nevarech. And before we do that, I just want to point out that, again, we take the Birkat Hamazon from the verse Ve'achalta, you ate, V'savata, and you were satisfied, Uverachta, and then you blessed, Uverachta Adonai Elohecha, Ala Haaretz Hatova Asher Natan Lach. And from that verse, we find a couple of sections of Birkat Hamazon. So basically, we derive the structure of the Birkat Hamazon that we know from this one verse from the Torah. So how do we derive? What does this look like? Well, we say V'achalta v'savata uverachta. So from this, we learn that we should invite our neighbors. Chaverai nevarech, Yehishim Adonai v'rachmetav ve'ad olam. So all of that section, we learn to say from V'achalta v'savata uverachta. Okay? The next section we say is the section that refers to God. So the Lord your God. So that would be Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hazan et haolam kulo, right? B'tuvo bechem b'chesed uv'rachamim. The next section refers to the land, because we say Adonai Elohecha al haaretz, on the land. So that is the section also Baruch atah Adonai al haaretz, on the land, ve'al hamazon, and on the food, the sustenance. So I'm not going to go into each section now, because I think it would be like I want to go into more blessings and all that stuff. But basically, the Birkat Hamazon structure is based off of this pasuk, and in the structure of the Birkat Hamazon, we have different ways of approaching God, and one way is like the first blessing. It's all about eating. It's all about, v'achalta, we ate, and it's really cool to see that maybe there are people out there starving for food, or maybe down the block from me or from you, there's people that are not getting enough food. What is important to remember, and this is something I find really beautiful, is that God created a world in which there is sustenance for all, and it's up to us to make sure that everyone is sustained. Now, I know that there are a few of you who go out on occasion to feed the needy, and I find that that's such a beautiful thing. And Birkat Hamazon, by saying the blessing Birkat Hamazon, it really gives, if you look at the words that are being said, you'll see that it really comes down to us to create a world in which we feed the needy as well as ourselves. So when we say God who gave all sustenance, the only way we can say that truthfully is if we go out into the world and try to feed those who aren't given sustenance. And the only reason why they're not given sustenance is because of people, not because of God. God provides the sustenance. So I find that very, very strong with Birkat Hamazon. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. The last part of the Birkat Hamazon, which I don't know if you know, it was introduced after the 2nd century CE is the section which says Hu Heitiv, Hu Meitiv, Hu Yetiv Lanu, Hu Gamlanu. God is good and good and good and good. And we basically, after that, say all these Harachamans. Harachaman, Hu Yivarech. You start saying the merciful one, please bless Israel. Harachaman, Hu Yivarech. Yifalsenu bechavod. Please give us, economic sustenance. Give us a paycheck, please. All of these things. And I thought it very important to share with you a song that a really good friend of mine wrote, Danny Rose, who added on to this, he added on Harachaman. Danny Rose is a friend of mine. He grew up in Borough Park as a chassid in Brooklyn, as a ger chassid, and he kind of went rogue at some point and decided to move to Israel and join the army, and he was a fellow lone soldier friend. And we lived together in an apartment, and one thing that's very awesome about Danny is, although he's not a religious, he's not observant, he absolutely loves prayer and absolutely loves singing the Jewish songs. And he kept his tradition. So he wrote this song, and I kind of feel like it's important that I share the song with you. So here are the words. I just put them on the side here. So when we get to Harachaman, all the different Harachamans in the Birkat Hamazon, at the end of them all, there's my friends and I add this one. And the words are the merciful one, and you can see on the right side what the words mean. Harachaman hu yevarech et medinat Yisrael reshit tzmichat geulatenu. Harachaman hu yevarech et chayalei hatzava tzava gana leYisrael yishmor aleim mikol tzara vetzukah Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Ata kitanu lan Ata shomer aleinu mikol tzara Ata lo ozev otanu af pam. So this is a song that my friend Danny Rose, who is a fellow lone soldier, wrote, kind of a blessing to God. And I know that in his mind he had many friends that he would hope to, he had many friends in mind when he wrote this song. And he wrote the music and the words. So Birkat Hamazon is a blessing we can say all the time. It really is. It's we can say it after every meal. And it reminds me, I think I told you this mashal, this metaphor that that the Mei Shiluach, a very interesting Hasidic rabbi in the 18th century or 19th century, like 1800s, wrote. He made a parallel between the words lechem and chalom or lichlom. Lechem meaning bread. We say Birkat Hamazon after we eat bread. And chalom is dreams. And in this, the place in which the Mei Shiluach talks about this is during Joseph's story in the dreams. You can go to the parasha and you can see that the Mei Shiluach comments on this. What is the connection between bread and dreams? Anyone? You can answer. This is an open question.
Position of the Chet and the Lamed.
Yeah, the way the word looks, they're made of the same letters. That's one very, I'm going to like write that in the message chat. So you have lechem, right? That's lechem, and chalom. So they're kind of like the same, almost from the same letters. Another interesting fact about lechem and chalom, according to the Mei Shiloach, and this is something I find very beautiful, is that we have physical bodies and we have spiritual souls. And when we talk about God giving us sustenance, we don't just talk about God giving us food for our bodies. We talk about the Torah, we talk about the sunsets, we talk about the music, the stuff that feeds our souls. And food feeds our bodies, like lechem gives us energy to move and to act. But dreams, the dreams we have, feed our bodies, feed our souls to go out and do, right? In a way, when you eat bread, you gain calories. And those calories you burn, I don't know the science, I'm going to let Seth nod your head if I'm right. I don't know. Bread gives us calories, energy. Well, dreams are dreams, like maybe not just like the weird dreams we have at night, but the dreams we think about, like the prayers we have, like please give my family health, give my community in San Diego an easy time with the corona crisis. All of these dreams that we have give us motivation to make these things happen. It's like calories, but for the soul. So the Mei Shiloach talks about that. So when we say Birkat HaMazon, we don't say just Birkat HaMazon, thank you God for the sustenance of the physical food, but we also say, God, thank you so much for the spiritual sustenance. I think there should be a separate bracha. Oh, you dream of eating Debbie's challah. I agree. I too dream of, yes. And these calories that we take into our souls have blessings, and we should look for those blessings always. So now I want to go into a couple of blessings that we can say on a daily basis. Debbie pointed out sometimes during our tefillah that there is a minhag, tradition, or to try to say 100 blessings a day, right? We can try to look for opportunities to say 100 blessings a day. I personally think if you can say 100 blessings a day meaningfully, you will be flying. You'll be in the air all the time. You'll be the happiest person or the most fulfilled person. So with that being said, I want to go into all these different blessings that we can say on a daily basis. And by the way, after this, I can send you all the blessings in a list so that you'll have them in front of you. You can print them out. I have different, this is from Raman USY, and it has like a list of the blessings. One of the blessings it doesn't have is the blessing we're going to talk about right now, which is one of my favorites. It's Borei Isvei V'Samim, okay? Which means, one sec, Borei Isvei V'Samim is basically the blessing we say on like good smelling herbs. Now, I don't know. I'm sure you're like, why is that such a big blessing? Like, okay, so you smell rosemary, big deal. The reason why I love it so much is the way I was introduced to this blessing, and I highly recommend in shul or at home this year during Corona Yom Kippur, you find a way to say this blessing. So here I am in the Sephardic minyan in Israel. I became honorary Sephardic when I moved to Israel. I decided that that was where my soul was calling. And I'm sitting in this Moroccan synagogue, and Mincha Yom Kippur is coming along, and I'm not the Chazan, so I don't have any energy because I know what it's like when you're just sitting there listening. You can get really tired. And all of a sudden, somebody starts passing around this thing called nana, which is like peppermint or spearmint. It's a huge bush of nana, and they're passing it around, and people are going, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei isvei v'samim. And it's like all of a sudden it's energizing these people. So on Yom Kippur, it's very difficult to get to 100 blessings because we don't have food. You barely go to the bathroom, so there's a blessing you could say on a bathroom, but okay, after Kol Nidre once and then you're done. So how do we fulfill the 100 blessings? So one of the ways is this blessing of a boes ve'vesam. It's one of my favorites. So I really recommend this year finding ways to bring that into your Yom Kippur life. When you're getting to Mincha and you're kind of getting tired, and or the Yonah is being, is being sung, you take something from outside, some rosemary or I don't know, and just say that blessing with all your might. And it feels like you're eating it as well, which is so beautiful on Yom Kippur. Like, it feels like you're eating it when you smell it. Now, it's not eating. It's not after my kashrut year of kashrut. I can tell you recha zelo milta, which means reach, the smell is not like eating. So don't worry about it. So that's one blessing you can say any day on anything. You can say it any nice smelling herb. Another blessing is another favorite of mine, and it's Tfilat HaDerech. Tfilat HaDerech is this blessing we say, or we ask, or Yehi Ratzon Milfanecha Adonai Eloheinu V'Avoteinu, Shetolichenu L'Shalom. Basically, please bring us on our travels, like make our travels safe. And there's halachot surrounding Tfilat HaDerech. So if you're, what I looked into is basically, if you're traveling for more than 75 minutes in any direction, you can say Tfilat HaDerech, but you can only say it once a day, halachically. Okay? So Tfilat HaDerech is a beautiful blessing you can say every day. Now, why I brought it up is because a couple of years ago, my friend Jeff and I wrote a song about this blessing. I don't want to get into the details, but I will say that it was a love song. It was written as a love song. My friend Jeff's kibbutz, it sounds weird, but kibbutz sister, he was adopted by a family, and the family's daughter, they had a relationship, and she went off for her travels for 6 or 7 months in India, and he was heartbroken. So he wrote this song, which I sing in the song as well, so don't think I'm not there. And the words are kind of appropriate. So I hope you can hear. I'm going to play it outside of my computer, so it should come in nicely. If it doesn't, Debbie, write to me and I'll know that it's just not working and I'll sing it myself. Okay? Let's do this again. It's going to take a second. Get to Yehi Ratzon. All right, get ready. It's just loading. Here we go. It starts with a plane taking off.
יהי רצון, השם אלוקינו, אלוקי אבותינו, שתגיענו לאחוז חפצנו, לחיים שמחה ושלום, יהי רצון, יהי רצון.
That's my friend Jeff.
You turn around to go. What I will wish for you, what more can I say to you to help you remember?
I'm the high harmony.
Yehi Ratzon, Yehi Ratzon, Hashem Elokeinu, Velokei Avoteinu, Shetigienu le'achot chafseinu, לחיים שמחה ושלום, יהי רצון, יהי רצון.
Want to continue or do you want to move on? It goes on for a little bit more. Yeah, continue?
Yes, we are proud of you. When you head out, the absence of sweetness is lie. I know what you're doing now is good for all those who are blessed with your efforts in time. Yehi Ratzon, Yehi Ratzon, Hashem Elokeinu, Elokei Avotenu, Shtehenu Lechol Chafseinu, Lechaim Simcha Shalom, Yehi Ratzon.
Okay, so that's Tfilat HaDerech, and we actually recorded that many years ago. It's on SoundCloud. You can always you go to Jeff Petroff, and all of our songs are on SoundCloud. I know if all of a sudden I see like 6 or 7 views that you've looked. So that's another bracha that we can say to appreciate the fact that we shouldn't take traveling for granted. And in the blessing itself, it says that that please give us a safe passage to where we're going and to return. So we only say it once a day. You shouldn't say it if you're going somewhere like to LA and then you leave LA in the same day. Don't say it. You don't have to say it again. It's already covered. That base is covered. So obviously, one of our favorite blessings is Shechianu v'kiyamanu v'giyanu l'zman hazeh, which you can almost say every day. I mean, there's something you can say on every day. And that's kind of like the story of the curse of blessings is like that. It's like, what can we find every day to say Shechianu over? You know? And I really want to, I would love to open that up to discussion. We don't have a lot of time, but I'd like to hear ways in which we can find things to say Shechianu on that maybe we take for granted. So if anyone wants to add, you can write it in the box as well. Now, as you're writing, I'm going to go through a list of other blessings that one could say that maybe you know or don't know. Every morning before we even start our tefillah, you're supposed to say the blessing over Torah. V'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We say it in our minyan before we actually read Torah, but you can say it before we say Birkot HaShachar. And a new piece of clothing, so a new piece of clothing, or a new food that you've never eaten, like a new fruit. Every year on Rosh Hashanah is a minhag to say like 12 or 10, to eat 10 different fruits and Sheikh Shechianu. There's a blessing I'm putting up. A mezuzah. You can say Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hatov v'meitiv, like when you hear good news. I'm sure you've heard of that one before. We have a blessing that we say, unfortunately, when we hear of somebody passing. But again, to every side of news, to every side of everything, there's 2 ways of looking at it. You can look at it as a curse or a blessing. And I think what we try to do in Judaism is even when something's hard to see as a blessing, we say to God, it's a blessing. Baruch Dayan Emet. Blessed is the true judge, unfortunately, when we hear somebody's passing. There's so many different blessings for food. Borei minei mezonot, if you're eating like a cake or something. Borei pri hagefen, from the vines of a fruit. Borei pri haaretz. Borei pri ha'etz, pri adama. Now my favorite blessings, the weird ones. Okay? When you see natural wonders, lightning or shooting stars, mountains, or even deserts and seas, you can say Baruch atah Adonai oseh ma'asev reshit. Okay? So who created, the creator, the one who creates. When you see the ocean, I mean, I don't know if you can say this every day. I think you could say it every day. Baruch atah Adonai shasa et hayam hagadol, the great ocean, the great ocean. If you see a beautiful flower, in Israel we have what do they call passiflora? You know passiflora? Passion fruit. The passion fruits have these beautiful flowers. Have you ever seen their flowers? So we go by one every day, and I always say to Ariel, I planted that years ago for you. And when you see a beautiful flower, you can say shekacha lo be'olamo. That was it was made in this world. When you see a rainbow, everyone knows the story of Noah's Ark and the promise that God made to us. But we shouldn't take this for granted ever, especially in the world we live in, that when there's a natural disaster, chas v'chalila, we remember that God will never really, God won't destroy us, because God made a brit, a promise that God will never destroy us. So, Baruch atah Adonai zocher habrit v'ne'eman bevrito v'kayam b'ma'amaro. And we remind God with that blessing, God, we see the rainbow. There's no way, you made a promise to us. You can't destroy the world again. And then the last one on this list is when you hear thunder or storms, shekocho ugvuato male olam, that God's strength and God's gvuato, like gvua, brave, fills the world. It's, we hear the thunder and we say, oh, that's God's might. So these are some blessings that we can say that are already written down, and I want to really insist, or I don't know if that's the word, but recommend that over the next couple of weeks, because we're leading up to the high holidays, and Elul, the month of Elul is approaching, I think on Wednesday or Thursday, if I'm not wrong, Rosh Chodesh Elul, we should start to go through this kind of reconstruction of ourselves, and remember the good things, and remember that God is here with us on earth. There's what to be happy about, as hard as it is. And I know it's hard because I'm going through it as well. And that's the reason why I did this specifically today, is because I need it so badly to remember that the world is blessed. So what we have, seasonal things like the first rose of the year. Good. And then Sue wrote, we had a terrible trip from Utah to San Diego in the winter. You can read this. Rosh Chodesh is Thursday. Thank you. And Friday. I didn't go to shul on Shabbat because there's really no shul to go to. And I didn't get to hear Birkat HaChodesh. So here we have a couple of ways and ideas of looking at the world that we live in and saying we can either see it as a blessing or a curse. And I'm charging you before the high holidays to see the world we live in, as hard as it is, with blessings. And there's a concept in Judaism, Naaseh v'nishma, we will do and we will hear. And that kind of goes with the body and the soul. Let your body do it. Say the blessing. Say it. And then eventually your soul will digest it and it will become a real thing. The other blessing that I didn't bring up, which I know that there's a new song that was written by Josh Wasarsky, right? Is about Asher Yatzal, which we say after going to the toilet. But it's a beautiful blessing that God helps and creates the body that works, and that we should never take for granted. So I'm going to end this session with going back to where we started with Na'ar hayiti gam zakanti v'lo hayiti tzadik ne'ezav. Because once again, there is the world we live in. We say in our Birkat Hamazon, God gives enough sustenance for everyone, and it's up to us not to allow a tzaddik or tzaddik's children to ne'ezav, to be left alone. What does that mean? Again, God created the world with enough sustenance for every single human being, and the only reason why not every single human being has enough sustenance is because of us. We're not doing enough to feed the needy. And if we were doing enough, if we were stopping those who are creating evil, then this statement would be truer than anything. Na'ar hayiti gam zakanti. And my great uncle would have to say it and sing it with all of us. So I'm going to sing it the way my grandfather sings it now. In the beginning I sang it the kind of more modern way, and the way my grandfather sings it, it's a little more dramatic. נער הייתי וגם זקנתי ולא ראיתי צדיק נעזב וזרעו המבקש לכם אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. טוב להודות לשם, טוב להודות לשם, ניי 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 איי ניי 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 איי ניי 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 איי ניי 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 איי ניי או להגיד בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות ולהגיד בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות. Thanks for joining in. It's been wonderful. I'm looking forward to Minyan tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Hanan. And I think that I think we all need that reminder to focus on blessings. And I think that if we were to say those 100 blessings every day, we wouldn't have time to fetch so much. So thank you so much again. It's so beautiful. And it's great to learn from you and with you.
Hanan, can I ask a question? If that prayer that you just said, if just like 2 words were changed, instead of yet I have not seen, I mean, I know I'm really a literal person, but let us not see the righteous forsaken. What if the words could be changed that way? It would be more accurate and your uncle would sing it maybe. I don't know. Because we have not seen, I don't like those words either. But I understand what you're saying too, but the words could be changed just slightly. I had a little problem with the song Protecting the Soldiers too, like just the last line that like nothing will happen. I reword it because something does happen sometimes. I mean, 6 months ago, a soldier was killed. So we don't want it to happen and we want God to watch over, but yet, I don't know. I have trouble with the wording.
With regards to the second thing you said, the words that were used I mean, my friend wrote it, and it was kind of like, he wrote it, the words are kind of biblical, so they are a little bit like, this is the way God works, you know, if you do good, God gives you good things, and if you do bad, you're going to get, you know, he doesn't believe that. It's just the way that, you know, and then Naraiti comes from Tehillim, it comes from Psalms, so I don't think changing it would be, I wouldn't change it. I guess we always have to, I mean, we can talk to Rabbi Josh about this. I'm taught that Midrash, the way we read things, we can't change the text, but we can change our understanding, right, of a text. Okay. And that's kind of how we do it. That's how I'm doing it here, because I agree with you. I also have a hard time, if I take it at simple face value, I can't necessarily agree with that. I don't agree with it. There's plenty of tzaddikim who lost their lives in the Holocaust and who lose their lives every day. But maybe if we say, it's like a charge. It's like, and then Yivarech et amo b'shalom, to give peace to our people. Maybe if we say, like, in order to bring peace to the world, we have to make sure that that this happens.
Right.
It's kind of
but
like a charge.
Like, go out and do it. If we could word it that way, it'd be nice.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, but I wouldn't change it. I'm just going to change change how I see it.
Okay, got it.
So Hanan has given us our marching orders that we have to work on our blessings, and not only the blessings, but making them reality. And, you know, and that's hard, but we can do it. We can do it. Thank you,
I
Hanan.
don't think it's homework, but God forbid it's homework, but I'm really just kind of talking, like I'm really trying to pull myself and saying, come on, do these things. You do it, you talk about it. Now go and see the light, see the blessings, because it's not easy. It's not easy, always.
My favorite pair in the little book that the Orthodox carry around, the paperback book with all the services and blessings and everything, is that there's a blessing for beautiful people and a blessing for ugly people. And those are my two favorites. And for a beautiful person, you say something in English that translates roughly to, oh, blessed be God who creates such as this in the world. And for an ugly person, you say, oh, blessed be God who makes things in various forms. And which I think is just fantastic.
I don't mean to like get all philosophical, but like on that note, I was thinking about the Birkat Hamazon, and we're created in Hashem's image. We're created in God's image, and the first, like, one of the first blessings we see in the Birkat Hamazon is like looking towards God like our parent. And I always say that, like, just we talk about sustenance. God, now not all mothers have breast milk. I know that. I know because I actually have joined a group of Facebook, or we've joined a group of Facebook about different ways of feeding children, and all is okay. But like a mother gives breast milk to a child when it's born, and so too God created us, and there's sustenance. And then if you like go to like the Kotel and you meet some of these really frum people, they'll say to you like, have as many kids as you want because God will provide. You create, God will provide. You're like, oh,